The morning air in Midorigaoka carried the gentle scent of wildflowers and old wood. 8-year-old Emika Tanaka was kneeling on the gravel path that led to her home. Her small hands trembled as she reached out toward an injured Akita lying in the grass. The dog barely moved, only wagging its tail faintly, its brown eyes filled with the light of pain. One hind leg was matted with blood, and its breathing was shallow and erratic. Emika moved slowly and whispered soothing words. She didn't know if the dog could hear her, but she took off her jacket and gently draped it over the animal to shield it from the wind. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the small phone her mother had given her for emergencies and called home. Her mother, Karen Tanaka, a nurse at the small-town animal clinic, arrived minutes later in their dusty station wagon. Together, they carefully lifted the wounded dog into the back of the car. Karen muttered quick instructions while Emika cradled the dog's head and whispered gently, "You're going to be okay. You'll get better, I promise." At the clinic, the team moved quickly. The dog's hind leg was broken. It had multiple gashes and showed signs of extreme exhaustion. No one knew where it had come from. There was no collar, no microchip. But from the moment Emika saw the dog, she had already named him Max. And Max wasn't just a dog she rescued. He was the beginning of a story waiting to unfold. Emika didn't know it yet, but saving Max would forever change her life. The yacht. First few days at the clinic were quiet. Max hardly moved. His leg was carefully splinted, and his body wrapped in a blanket scented with antiseptic and lavender. He didn't bark or whine, just watched, still and silent. And Emika was always there. She had always loved animals. Since she was little, she would gently cup butterflies in her hands and speak to stray cats as if she were their guardian. But lately she had grown quiet. A few months ago, Emika had lost her father to a sudden illness, and his absence had left a dull ache in everything she did. So when she found Max lying hurt and alone by the road, something inside her shifted. Without fear or hesitation, it was as if she saw a reflection of her own pain in his. Emika didn't pity Max. From the moment their eyes met, she loved him. Every day after school, instead of going home, Emika ran straight to the animal clinic. She would sit beside Max's crate and read to him. Fairy tales, wildlife stories, even adventures from medieval times. She spoke in the gentle, soothing tone of a child who believes someone is truly listening. At first, Max only blinked slowly when she came near, but gradually something changed. His eyes followed her around the room. His ears perked up at the sound of her voice. One day, when Emika dropped her book and slumped with fatigue, Max gave a faint wag of his tail. Emika froze, then beamed so brightly her cheeks hurt from smiling. From that day forward, Max began to change. He started sitting up more, trying to stand. He let Emika brush his fur and even rested his head on her lap. Her love reached him, and Max fought to live. "You're the reason he's healing," Karen told her. Emika looked up, gently stroking Max's ear through the bars of his crate, and softly said, "You're not alone anymore. I'm here too." By early spring, Max had regained much of his strength. He was limping less, his fur had grown in thick and soft, and the pain had faded from his eyes. They put up flyers, contacted local shelters, but no one came forward. And so, without any formal discussion, the Tanaka family welcomed Max as their own. That afternoon, Emika stood just outside the exam room at the clinic. Her mother was giving Max his routine checkup. Karen's hands moved gently across the dog's belly, then suddenly stopped. She looked up at Emika with a curious expression. "Come here, Emmy," she said, taking her daughter's hand and placing it where hers had been. "Tell me if you feel anything." Emika tilted her head, puzzled. At first she felt nothing, just the rise and fall of Max's calm breathing. But then a faint flutter, like a ripple in water or the beating of a tiny underwater heart, reached her fingertips. Her eyes widened. "Is that?" Karen smiled. "Yes, she's going to have babies." Emika stood still, filled with a sense of wonder. Her hand remained on Max's belly, and for the first time in a long while, her face lit up with pure joy. "Puppies," she whispered, as if the word itself held magic. That night, Emika made a bed for herself on the floor next to Max's crate. She curled under the blankets and pressed her cheek to Max's warm side. The room was quiet, but Emika's voice was steady. "I'll help you be a mom," she said. "I'll take care of them. I promise." Max let out a soft sigh and leaned closer. In that moment, under the gentle light and quiet breaths, a promise was made. From girl to dog. It was silent, sacred, and unbreakable. Morning came as it always did. Sunlight poured through the Tanaka family's window, casting golden patterns on the wooden floor. Emika sat at the kitchen table, absent-mindedly stirring her cereal, listening to her mother go about the morning routine. Max lay by the window, her round belly rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Everything felt calm, predictable, safe. Then came a sound. A loud thump from the living room, followed by a sharp, broken whine. Emika's spoon clattered to the floor. As she leapt to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest, Karen was already moving. Her face marked by a tension Emika had never seen before. Emma screamed and ran after her mother. They found Max collapsed on the floor. His breathing was shallow, and his body trembled. One of his hind legs twitched, slightly, and then went still. Karen dropped to her knees and immediately checked Max's pulse. Her eyes searched for any sign that something was still stable. "Emma, Kit, now," she said. Her voice was steady but taut. Emma froze for a moment, staring into Max's dull eyes. Then she turned and ran down the hallway. Her fingers fumbled with the key to the kit room as her voice broke into fragmented cries for help. The next few minutes were a blur, sirens, the roar of a rushing engine, and gentler murmurs. Emma sat in the back seat, cradling Max's head. "Stay with me," she whispered again and again, stroking the fur on his face. "Don't go." But deep inside, somewhere beneath the hope, fear had begun to take root. She saw it in her mother's trembling hand, in the way Max's breathing hitched and began to slow. Emma didn't want to believe it, couldn't believe it, but a small voice inside her whispered words she didn't want to hear. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. The animal hospital reeked of disinfectant and fear. Emma stood shaking in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself. Through the glass doors, she caught a glimpse of Max, unmoving, being wheeled into the emergency room. The door slammed shut with a final thud that made her jump. Karen vanished beyond the doors with the busy, urgent staff. Machines beeped, voices issued crisp, short commands. Emma could barely see her mother's outline, but even that movement, practiced as it was, looked desperate. Everything felt far away, as if she were watching someone else's nightmare. She pressed her forehead against the cold window, searching for Max amid the chaos. Her breath fogged the glass, tears blurring her vision, but she didn't move. A nurse tried to guide her to a seat. She barely noticed. She couldn't hear the words of comfort. All she could do was hope. A hope that went beyond reason, beyond reality. Then the door opened. Karen stepped out first. Her face was pale, quiet tears tracing lines down her cheeks. Behind her came a man Emma hadn't seen in years, Dr. Alan Kobayashi, a senior veterinarian at the hospital. He had rushed there after an emergency call. Emma looked up, her eyes wild with questions. They didn't need to speak. She saw the truth in their faces. Karen knelt beside her. "My sweet girl." Emma shook her head. "No," she said. "No, he's okay. He's going to be okay." "I'm so sorry," Karen choked out. "We couldn't save Max." The world fell apart. Emma collapsed, sobbing into her mother's arms. Her body trembled with a pain too deep for words. Max was gone, but then something strange happened. A movement behind Karen. Dr. Kobayashi stepped forward, holding a small bundle wrapped in a towel. He knelt gently. "One," he said softly. "We managed to save one puppy, but it doesn't look good. We did everything we could." Through her tears, Emma gave a whisper of a nod. Her voice was nearly gone. Can I hold it?" Karen hesitated, then nodded faintly. Dr. Kobayashi placed the tiny bundle into Emma's outstretched hands. The puppy was unbelievably small. Its fur was damp, limbs still, chest unmoving. It felt more like a memory than a living being. Emma slowly sat down on the cold tile floor, curling herself around the puppy. Gently, she pressed it to her chest and began massaging through the towel, softly, rhythmically, trying to coax life back into the unresponsive body. "I promised," she whispered. "I promised I'd take care of you." Minutes passed. Nothing changed. Still, Emma didn't stop. She rubbed harder, spoke louder. "Please come back." Nothing. Her hands eventually drooped, limp. Her voice faded, exhausted, into silence. "I tried," she said in a barely audible voice. "I really tried." And then, something inside her cracked open. Emma pulled the puppy tighter to her chest, hugging it firmly. A sob escaped her lips, and she began to cry. A deep, aching sob that rocked her small frame. A single tear rolled down her cheek, landing in the puppy's fur. It slid slowly along the curve of the tiny, unmoving face. Then movement, so faint it was almost missed. Emma gasped. Her eyes widened. Again, a twitch, then a weak, muffled cry. Dr. Kobayashi rushed forward. Karen sucked in a breath. The medical team sprang into action, but Emma didn't move. She stared in wonder as life returned to the fragile little body she had nearly given up on. Tears still flowed down her cheeks, but now they were filled with hope. "You came back," she whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to the puppy's damp forehead. "Your name is Charlie." The next few hours passed like a fragile dream. Every sound, every tiny movement carried heavy hope. Charlie was moved to the hospital's neonatal care unit, a small, temperature-controlled room used for the most delicate cases. He was placed in a glass incubator, about the size of a laundry basket. Tubes and wires tracked every breath, every heartbeat. A heat pad warmed him, and soft light bathed him in gentle warmth. Karen explained everything in a low, calm voice. "We need to keep his body temperature stable. He'll need oxygen and round-the-clock care. There's still no guarantee he'll survive." Emma listened without blinking, without flinching. She simply nodded. From that moment on, she refused to leave Charlie's side, except when absolutely necessary. After school, she ran to the animal hospital. She dragged a chair beside the incubator, pressed her hand to the glass, and spoke softly. "You're doing so well," she told him. "Just keep breathing, I'm here." Sometimes she read stories of brave heroes or lost animals who always found their way home. Other times she just breathed with him, her breath in sync with his faint little gasps. At night, while her mother tended to Charlie's needs every 2 hours, Emma lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, whispering quiet prayers into the darkness. Slowly, painfully, Charlie began to change. His breathing grew stronger. His legs kicked with slightly more force. The deep blue hue around his nose and feet began to fade. One evening, when Emma arrived, Charlie sat, barely trembling, in the incubator. When he saw her, his eyes opened wider. His tiny tail twitched once against the soft blanket. Emma smiled through tears. Charlie was breathing, and this time, he wasn't fighting alone. As days turned into weeks, Charlie's battle for life unfolded before Emma's eyes like a quiet miracle. No longer confined to the incubator, he was moved to a cozy corner of the hospital, lined with soft blankets, low walls, and the familiar scent of Emma's jacket. He still needed constant care, but now he was stronger, more alert. Every day Emma sat beside him, calm and steady. She talked to him, about her day, about anything. Sometimes she just repeated, "You're okay. You're loved." Charlie responded in ways that surprised even the staff. The moment Emma entered the room, his tiny head lifted. His eyes followed her every move. When she reached toward him, he leaned into her touch. His tail gave a small, joyful wag. Karen noticed it too. One afternoon, as Charlie stumbled forward, legs shaky, trying to walk toward her. Karen watched, quietly amazed. "I've never seen anything like this," she said softly. "That pup, he knows you, Emma, he's yours." And Emma knew it too. Those quiet moments they shared, something more than survival began to take root. A new bond built on purpose. Charlie wasn't just any puppy. He was Max's legacy. He was Emma's second chance to keep her promise. Each feeding, every tiny step he took, the way he nudged his head into her palm, these were proof that love, real love, could mend even what once felt broken beyond repair. After one gentle physical therapy session, Charlie curled up beside her and tucked his head under her arm before falling asleep. Emma looked down at him, placing her hand over the steady thump of his tiny heart. "You're here now," she whispered. "We have each other." And for the first time in a long while, Emma no longer felt alone in her healing. The fear that once gripped her began to loosen its hold, day by day. She started to notice small joys again, how Charlie wagged his tail. When she spoke, how his tiny bark grew stronger with time. The pain of losing Max was still there, but now it came with warmth, not just sorrow. She wasn't just saving Charlie anymore. They were growing together. Something began to shift in the quiet rhythm of their days. Not all at once, but slowly, like morning light creeping across a dark room. Emma no longer held her breath every time Charlie moved. His steps grew steadier, his eyes brighter. Each small victory, his first bark, the awkward chase after a toy, was another piece of herself stitching back together. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were learning how to live again. As Charlie grew stronger, so did Emma. The clumsy little pup who once fit snugly in her palm now raced down the halls of the animal clinic. Ears too big for his head, legs always moving faster than his balance could handle. He was energy and life and love, all wrapped up in a scruffy body that never left Emma's side. She trained him with patience, celebrated every tiny milestone, and placed a framed photo of Max beside Charlie's bed. Sometimes, when Charlie curled up beside her, she felt Max's presence too, proud, gentle, watching over them. One afternoon, while brushing Charlie's now warm, healthy coat, Emma looked up at her mother and said quietly, "Someday I want to be a vet like you." Karen looked at her daughter, eyes wide with emotion, then knelt beside her. "You already have the most important part," she said, brushing Emma's hair back behind her ear. "A heart that never gives up." Emma smiled, and the words sank deep into her heart. The pain of losing Max hadn't vanished, but with Charlie by her side, it no longer held her back. In each breath Charlie took, Emma was reminded of the promise she made, not just to Max, but to herself. And that quiet promise shaped the path she walked, a life built on compassion, courage, and purpose.